So we're live. Well, good evening, everyone. This is Mayor Bob. We are going to start our regular city council meeting that's scheduled for December 2nd. And we have, I'll ask for a roll call, but just so everyone online can hear, we have 4 council members in the building. And we have our legal counsel here. And we have our deputy clerk and city manager. So I'll start with a roll call, please.
Mayor Giles.
Here.
Councilmember Machezik.
Here.
Councilmember Nelson.
Here.
Councilmember Nielsen.
Yes.
Councilmember Callan is absent.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will ask for a motion to approve our agenda, please.
Move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you both. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the published agenda that's in our packet. And I will call for a voice vote. All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. I'll ask Sarah if you could do a roll call vote on that, please.
Mayor Giles.
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik.
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries and consent agenda is approved. Our next item is general public comment. Did we receive any comments ahead of time?
There were no written comments.
No written comments? Thank you, Sarah. Did anyone ask to be online with us?
No.
Any requests for that? Okay. All right, so we'll close out the general public comment period. There wasn't any. And we'll move into our section of business called reports. And Lindsay Harris, I see you on the screen. Could you give us a quick synopsis on the chamber report?
Good evening, everybody. Sarah, nice to meet you over the over the internet. You're doing a great job. I guess, does council have any questions on our minutes or on our report?
We'll start with that. Any questions for Lindsay?
I don't have a question, Lindsay, on the report, but I had a question just in general about, you had a comment in the report about vision and that. And I was just wondering what amount of chamber time from the board is spent around thinking what types of businesses do we want to lure to McCall? And how do we shape growth by the type of those businesses? You know, on the 2-year, 5-year, 10-year. I'm just wondering how, and of course the idea is how consistent that would be with city planning on the same way of thinking how do we make our community attractive to the types of businesses that lend to the quality of life and future we want to have.
That's a great question and thought. I guess I would propose that perhaps, I know that West Central Mountains Economic Development Council also held their annual meeting as an organization last month. So maybe the 3 of us could sit down and kind of compare notes. Maybe this is a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah, perhaps some other comments. It was just a thought, and Annette probably knows what's been done on that perhaps already, but I just attended a seminar yesterday. It was kind of interesting listening to how towns position themselves in a way to say to compete. But more than compete, we are so attractive. It's just a matter of the kind of thinking about what we think are the right businesses for us. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess our visioning was retreat kind of, centered around what our function is and the direction we want to take things for, as a visitors bureau and as messaging to the public, the types of people we want to attract to visit us and move here too. So, that definitely falls in line. We haven't made it that far necessarily, but I definitely think that would be a more collaborative partnership type of assessment with other organizations and with the city that would be of benefit.
That's a good thought, because the West Central Mountains Economic Council does think that way. We should all make sure we're all kind of,
On the
like you
same
say,
page.
collaborative. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great thought. And I wrote that down. So maybe after the new year or after Winter Carnival, we can sit down.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lyle. Councilman Lyle.
Yeah. Oh, no. Wow, it was sure up to you.
Does anybody else have any more pointed questions, or I can just give you a quick rundown of what's going on and what's in the pipeline?
Let's do that. Give us a
Okay.
quick synopsis.
Yesterday I had some quality time with Kurt Wolf and Todd and Nick, and we were a team to hang the hearts from the Barbara Morgan students and community hearts that people had painted for that Keep McCall Kind campaign. So I was really thankful that they pitched in so we could get at least a portion of those strung for underneath the tree for the tree lighting tomorrow. And I think they'll look gorgeous as they're illuminated tomorrow night. And then we'll be passing out the rest of the hearts to community members to distribute throughout town and hang at their favorite spots and their favorite businesses or their neighbor's home. Or we'd love people to go take them down Floyd Street to McCall Rehab and the senior housing down there. So that was a bright spot for this week, and things are coming together for the tree lighting tomorrow. So I think it will be a really wonderful night, and I hope you guys can join us. I know Mayor Bob, I'm sure you've been practicing for your wish, and we're just thankful for the city's collaboration to put on such a wonderful event. And we have almost 20 businesses that we know of that are participating in Shop Late, which is a great resurgence of participation. So just a reminder to shop local this holiday season, and we have those listed on our social media, and I think the Star News may have highlighted those participants as well. Mountain Holidays Guide comes out tomorrow. Hopefully we'll receive it physically. It's being shipped right now, so hopefully we'll have that in time for the tree lighting events and things happening from December 1st through January 1st. Our Leadership Academy tomorrow has their first in-session meeting, and they'll be learning about healthcare in the region. And as we mentioned, our November planning session went really well. And I'm also happy to send you guys the membership survey results. I think you were interested in seeing those. We had about 60 respondents. Do you guys want to see what our members had to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay, I will email that. And then Winter Carnival, we were behind the ball. We were waiting to see what was going to happen with COVID and the pandemic, but we felt comfortable moving forward with out promoting outside events. And also the theme, a return to our roots. We want to keep Winter Carnival the spirit alive. We were reluctant to skip another year, and obviously in 2023 we'll be reevaluating Carnival and what that looks like for the community. But for the sake of 2022, we wanted to celebrate it in the spirit of Carnival and outdoor recreation and celebrate our winter culture here. So that's what the theme is an ode to. So we're full steam ahead. We have somebody, Tanya Newts, who owns T Rents Vintage, and she's partnering with us. We've hired her to help coordinate Winter Carnival. And she's already doing an awesome job. And she's from here. She lives here. She works in event planning, and she's highly organized. So we're grateful for her help. Any questions?
I think we're good, Lindsay. Thanks for covering all of that, and
Yeah.
look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Yes, it'll be great. Thank you, guys. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye.
All right, the next section is monthly department reports, and we'll stick to our format that seems to be working really well. I'll just open it up. Do any members of City Council have questions for any of the department heads based on what they've read in those reports?
None for me.
None for me.
Good, yeah.
All right, we are all good on that. Department heads, thanks for doing a great job on those. Keep putting together good, comprehensive, and easy to understand reports for us. It's really helpful to council. We're going to move next to Chief Justin Williams to talk to us about COVID-19.
Unmute myself there. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Justin Williams, Chief of Police. December 2nd, 2021, we're looking at COVID, both locally and nationally, as a matter of fact. So currently in Idaho, we are still in stage 4, where we've been for many, many months now. We're no longer under the crisis standards of care, as we talked about previously. Before the conversations that we've had about the being under the crisis standards of care. So we were quite hopeful in the last few weeks that we were making a turn and that we were going to be able to move forward, maybe with reducing some of the restrictions, so to speak. However, there's been a new variant that's come up that I'm sure each and every one of you have heard about, have seen. There's really not a whole lot of information, but we'll touch on that in a few minutes. But firstly, the weekly cases in Valley County right now we're currently at 17 weekly cases. We had a spike last week of up to 22. Previously, in our last meeting, we were at 21 cases. We are still rated as a high transmission area with more than 149 cases per 100,000 people in population. And just as a reminder, for us to ever get below that high transmission, we have to be below 10 cases for a specific period of time before we can go below that threshold. We have not been below that threshold, I don't think, in maybe 9 months, 10 months, something along those lines. So we've remained in the high category. We'll probably remain that way for the foreseeable future. Right now, our positivity rate in testing is up to 11%. It was 8% previously in our last meeting. Right now, as we speak, we are much lower in our number of cases than we were at this time last year. Roughly, there were around 50 cases this time in December of last year. We had seen a spike, and we had seen a continual spike going up through the middle of January. So we're anticipating that there will probably be another spike in December and January, as we've seen the last couple of years. And we're trying to prepare for that as well as we can. The newest variant, Omicron, there's little that's known or published about this particular variant at this time. It's highly contagious from what the CDC says and what the WHO, the World Health Organization, says about it as well. But as I said, there's little known about it except for the symptoms. The symptoms on these tend to be a little milder than the regular COVID or the Delta variant, and that they're more flu-like: body aches, pains, fever, chills, those types of things. Vaccinated persons that have gotten this here in the United States so far have had mild symptoms, and it is we've had one case, I think, recently confirmed in Colorado. That particular person had just come back from South Africa. She was vaccinated, but she's still under the weather with these particular symptoms. Cases have been identified in California, Colorado, and Minnesota as of right now. And the CDC and CDH or WHO are thinking that it is only a matter of time before it starts spreading through the U.S. Now, what does that mean for the city and our response? Well, we'll continue to follow the lead of the Centers for Disease Control as well as Central District Health and follow their recommendations. And right now they have no other recommendations that have been made for this particular variant, and they're maintaining the mask wearing and the vaccination recommendations for those particular people. So right now we will make no changes in mask use or operating procedures within city facilities. We'll continue to require masks. We'll continue to require pod work and alternating days and things of that until more information and direction is available both at the federal level and at the state level. So it's going to be business as usual continuing through the month of December. Do not anticipate any changes coming from us on what it is that we're doing. So that particular information is the update for what we have right now. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer what I can.
Any questions for Chief Williams?
Well, thanks, Chief.
None for me.
That was well done.
Thank you. Annette, anything you would like to add to the
No, I think
discussion?
you touched on everything, and in your email and in the updated packet is the written report from St. Luke's. And as always, recommend folks get their boosters if they're more than 6 months from their second shot. And those are available at the pharmacies at Albertsons and Rite Aid, as well as the clinic.
Great, thank you. All right, we will move on to the next part of our agenda, and that is the public hearing, Agenda Bill 21-281. And this is a request to approve annexation, which is an ordinance for some property out in Pilgrim Cove. So let me open the public hearing formally and ask for a motion from council to open this hearing.
You open the public hearing.
Second.
Thanks, Colby. Thanks, Mike. Council, we will use a voice vote on this. Well, a motion has been made and seconded to open the public hearing. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Hearing no one in opposition, the public hearing is formally opened. And we will move to the city department staff report. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Giles. So first off, the items in your packet that I'd like to introduce into the record. The legal notice requirements, I realized a few minutes ago that since I did not prepare findings of fact for this because we have no standards for annexation to meet that criteria, I don't generally prepare findings, I just create an ordinance. So you did not get a summary of the public notice requirements. So those are in handouts that are on the table in front of you there. The application for this item is on pages 117 through 119 of your packet. The staff report is pages 111 and 112. The motion documents, the ordinance that you will be voting on tonight is pages 113 and 114. And then there is a summary of that ordinance on pages 115 and 116. And then there's a vicinity map included in the packet as well on our page 120.
Any questions on those items from council? We good with that?
Yes.
All right. Anyone on council have anything to declare in terms of conflicts of interest, ex parte, communication, anything like that?
Nope. No.
I don't.
Me either. So the four of us at the meeting have nothing to declare there. So we'll move ahead to step 4. Brian, back to you on presenting the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Giles. Yes, this application is to annex 2 parcels at 1919 and 1917 Pilgrim Cove Road. They are not proposing to change the zoning or land use of any sort in this annexation application. The purpose of the application is to be able to connect to city water service, which is required per McCall City Code section 62010. There's water service to the site, ready to go whenever they wish to pull building permits for the structures they're hoping to construct in the future. It is contiguous to city limits and is really a very straightforward application. And as a result, I recommend approval with the one condition in your staff report that they receive final engineering approval.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian up to this point?
Yeah, so I'm not getting the GIS pulled up, or at least being able to do anything with it right now. So just for refreshing, Pilgrim Cove Road is city limits, so this property is on the other side of city limits, and it's the only one on that side of the street that is wanting to be connected, or that, help us out there, just as far as the map goes. So can you fill us in on that, Brian?
Yeah, so the municipal boundary in this area generally runs through the center line of Pilgrim Cove Road. There are a handful of properties on the east side of Pilgrim Cove that do have, or that are annexed into the city, and Seaway subdivision that is just to the north of this is not annexed, but is grandfathered into the city water system. But yes.
Oh, so help us out just for educational purposes. So, and for anybody listening, so Pilgrim Cove Road being the city limits, and then to the east of Pilgrim Cove Road, Seaway subdivision is those folks all, as far as we know, or many of, have city water service, and then some of the folks do not and are on wells, and others, there are others that, give us an overview if you could, of what you know. Please.
Yeah, as I said, the city limits goes through Pilgrim Cove Road, carries north-south through there. Seaway subdivision, when it was originally entitled, I don't know if it predated this code that you must be annexed to receive city water, or if they worked out some sort of agreement at that time. But yes, all the lots within Seaway subdivision have city water service. I think the parcels to the south of the subject properties are generally on well, but I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
Any other questions before we move ahead to public comment?
I'm going to follow up on what I thought might be alluding to that for education again, Brian, thanks. So we look at the Seaway subdivision in there. Is there some uniformity, or is there, in terms of the ones that are annexed, and is there a future look at thinking there should be a consistent approach to all those properties, particularly from the ones that we're looking at today and going north? Are they already, is there any kind of a annexed pattern, or are they all annexed, or is it hodgepodge?
Or Councilman Nelson, yeah, that generally moving forward now, we want anyone that's going to connect to city water to be within city limits. Putting the horse back in the barn is a little difficult. We generally try not to do forced annexations with people if we can avoid it, because it is a rather painful process, and so we probably don't. It's not worth it to do that, since we can collect water fees through other means beyond just property taxes. For those that are on city water but outside of city limits, those small number of properties.
Yeah, I'm not able to pull up any layers on,
Yeah, no, it's just an interesting thing.
Yeah, I don't know why.
yeah, it's just got a blank for the layers on there.
When you're thinking of consistency and fairness and people who use the city and city services and those who are annexed and those aren't, and they're adjacent to each other, the tax differentiation, it's just something more for me to learn about in that. But it seems like to have some kind of uniformity or consistency in the long run is best.
Well, I think we do have that. Nathan, I see you on the screen, so you might be able to help us a little bit, but I believe we do have a consistent policy and ordinances on the books that addressed when property changes ownership or when someone goes from bare ground to wanting to build a house and it's immediately adjacent. And that's what this applicant falls under. So I believe we do have some policies that will move us in that consistent direction. But as Brian pointed out, taking on wholesale neighborhoods is very difficult up here politically compared to in the valley.
Yeah.
So Brian and Nathan, could you kind of weigh in on that have we characterized it accurately?
City Council, Nathan Stewart, Public Works Director. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. I can't speak to the city's approach or philosophy on annexation, but what I can tell you is that Seaway Loop, along with some other properties in the Pilgrim Cove area, as well as along the east side of the city of McCall, does have customers with our water system that is outside the city limits. And McCall's water department has a separate fee structure for properties that receive city water that are outside the city limits. Having that utility being served does give the city some type of fact or characteristic about that property that would justify annexation. But again, that's a political decision to annex in or request annexation. If a property that is outside the city limits would like to get city water, we do not offer city water to properties outside the city limits unless they annex. So that may be part of the reason that this property is requesting to become annexed, because then they would become eligible. So from the present day moving forward, you cannot receive city water unless you become annexed. But decisions that have been made in the past have allowed properties to have city water that is outside the city limits. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that was, well, Brian stated that really clearly to us in the packet, that moving forward, that is the policy on the books, the consistent policy, and that these owners of the two lots, that's why they came forward and asked to be annexed, because they would like city water. So it seems like, you know, things aren't perfect, and we have things in the past that we'd like to change, but in this particular application, it seems very consistent with our policies. Is that a correct synopsis, Brian and Nathan?
Mayor Giles, yes, that is correct.
I would agree.
So any more questions for the staff on the specifics? And if not, we're going to move into public comment that we received on this.
The other question I have on it is, so when we do the annexation on this, so then our city limits line changes and goes around these two parcels?
That's what the packet says, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Brian and Nathan?
Yes, that is the effect of annexation, is that it redraws the municipal boundary to go around the exterior of these two parcels.
So not only does that boundary change, that at some point they'll pay property taxes to the city and pay into.
Yeah.
So, you know, those are all good things as a part of annexation.
So they're getting there, it looks like the water, so I was able to pull up the map now, and I can see that probably 80% of the properties on Seaway Loop have a water service connection. And then these folks border with two parcels adjacent there, which is a little more clear on the map. And so then basically we've opened up the discussion that if anybody along that east side of Pilgrim Cove Road wanted to come on board, they could.
Mhm.
Because the water main's there, but if somebody, in the case of the subject property, they've got two parcels there, one along the road and then one that's behind it. So they're gonna get in. And then if somebody else wanted to, we would, as long as they have a direct connection. That's kind of what
That's kind of what I got out of the reading the packet, yeah.
I just want to make sure everybody understands, and anybody that has any questions that's watching has a clear understanding, and that we all do, just because it's a little bit out of the
Ordinary, yeah. Oh, that's good discussion. So Sarah, did we receive any public comments on this, for this
No.
public hearing?
We did not receive any public comments for the public hearing.
So nothing in writing before 3 o'clock and no requests to talk to us tonight.
Correct.
Thank you. So let the record show no public comments have been received regarding this public hearing. So since we did not receive any public comments or any requests to speak to us tonight,
And Mr. Mayor, is the applicant going to address the council at all? Do you know?
do we know in this case, Brian?
Hi, we're here. Yeah, the applicant is on the line here and can't speak if he wishes to.
Yeah, this is John and my wife Natalie. We're both here.
So thank you for joining us tonight, John and Natalie. If in our process that we have, it's a very specific step-by-step process. And the applicant always has an opportunity to talk to us. And then if there's anything you would like to add that hasn't been said before, either by staff or someone else, then please fill us in. And there might be some questions that we have for you.
I don't think we have anything to add except something like we have been coming up there for 10 years and we love the place and we're looking forward to eventually building and retiring or moving up there.
Well, thank you. And we are glad that you would like to be annexed. I think that's great. Any questions for the applicant?
None for me.
Okay, there are no questions for the applicant, and there are no public comments that have been filed on this hearing or requests to comment. So, Bill, I believe we can close the public comment section of the hearing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks for helping us stay on track, making sure that we followed that process. So our next step is all right, so we don't need any additional witnesses or any rebuttal by department staff. So we're to a decision point where I'm going to ask council if you would like to proceed to close the receipt of testimony and evidence and then proceed to deliberation. That's one option. The other options are to recess, continue the hearing, or close the receipt of testimony and evidence and proceed to we just talked about that one. Yeah, it's the same three options that we've had in the other hearings. So what are your desires? Do you feel you have enough information, questions have been answered, and you'd like to deliberate and then make a motion of some type?
That sounds like a great plan.
Me too.
Great. Okay, everyone's on board with that. Thank you, council. So we're going to close the receipt of testimony and evidence and proceed to deliberation. This requires a motion, so I'll ask for a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to close the receipt of testimony and evidence and proceed to deliberation on this particular public hearing. And I would ask for a voice vote on that. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If there's anyone opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, that motion carries, and we will proceed to close the receipt of testimony and proceed to deliberation. So in summary of what we've heard so far, the applicant and our city staff are on board. The applicant would like to request annexation for these two lots. And at some point, we'll be constructing buildings and hooking in and using city water and putting in the appropriate infrastructure to do that. And the applicant is aware that this will result in a change in the actual city boundary, and they'll be part of the city. So that's kind of a quick summary in layman's terms. I'm going to ask each council member what your overall thoughts are about that. Are you ready to proceed to making a motion on that? Or are there things that you're concerned about in this particular application?
No concerns for me.
Ready for a motion.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns.
So I agree. So the audience can hear, all four council members are ready to proceed to a motion. I'll call for a motion and someone to second that motion.
I think this reads correctly then. I move we approve annexation ordinance for Annex 21-01 at 1917 and 1919 Pilgrim Cove Road for Natalie Smith and John Selfridge.
Second.
Okay,
Do we,
does
this one not need the suspension of the rules first?
So all they're doing at this point
Oh,
is
it's the
to,
application, okay.
yeah,
I'm
just to
sorry.
approve the application and then
and
they,
then we're going to go to the
Great.
suspension of the
Okay,
rules.
Thank you.
All right, so a motion's on the table. May I have a roll call vote for that, please?
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Thank you, council. So I'll ask for a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only, one time only, ordinance number
1008.
1008.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to suspend the rules, read by title only, one time only, ordinance number 1008. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
That motion carries. And would you help us with that? Please read that ordinance.
an ordinance of the city of McCall Valley County, Idaho, annexing the real property located at 1917 and 1919 Pilgrim Cove Road into the city of McCall Valley County, Idaho. Zoning the same R4 low-density residential and directing the city engineer to alter the use and area map accordingly.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, I will look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 1008.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance 1008, approving the annexation application, Annex 21-01 for Natalie Smith and John Selfridge, as recommended by the McCall Area Planning and Zoning Commission. Approve the summary for publication and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Thank you both. Motion has been made and seconded to adopt ordinance number 1008, approving the annexation application, Annex 21-01 for Natalie Smith and John Selfridge, as recommended by the McCall Area Planning and Zoning Commission. Approve the summary for publication and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries. I think we have completed all the steps in this public hearing and made a decision that is documented. Bill, are we good on this?
You're done.
Thank you very much for guiding us through.
City just got 1 acre bigger.
City just grew 1 acre bigger. Colby said so. Way to go, Brian.
2 more voters.
We're headed in the right direction. All right. Thank you very much, Brian. So our next item is we'll be moving into a work session, Agenda Bill 21-280. And this is our second touch by City Council on recommended code revisions and policy modifications that have to do with snow storage and winter parking. Nathan, will you be guiding us through this?
I will, Mayor Giles, although I also have Chief Williams here with us tonight, who's critical in this agenda bill and discussion, as well as Annette. So I guess I'll just get started if you'd like.
That'd be great. So Nathan and Justin, welcome. And the two of you plus Annette will brief us on this second touch, and we look forward to this part of the work session.
Yeah, and I'd also add that Bill Nichols will be facilitating some of the discussion tonight as well. City Council, this is our second time we've had a chance to discuss this topic. The general nature of this agenda bill is to evaluate our current parking regulations with respect to winter operations, and also try to improve upon our ability to enforce our policies with respect to snow storage within the public right-of-way. As we discussed back in May, these are significant issues that greatly impact the efficiency in which the city can plow the snow in the limited timeframes that we have and get the city open for business, as well as get EMS services access to all of our customers and different residents and locations throughout the community. Over the past month, both Chief Williams as well as White Peterson and Annette and I have been discussing ways in which we can improve upon the policies and our code. And our general goal is to make the process simpler, less expensive, and more efficient for staff. One of those principal changes is to decriminalize some of these infractions and make them violations or fines. And Bill Nichols can explain some of that tonight. And ultimately, our goal is to get your feedback on the direction that we're heading, and hopefully we can finalize some code and present it to you at a future meeting. So I think at this point, unless Justin, you wanted to provide some additional comments, I'd like to pass it over to Bill Nichols, because his team, particularly Bill Punkany, have worked on some code revisions, draft code revisions that are in your packet, and he can kind of outline what that framework looks like.
Mayor and council, the primary emphasis on the revisions was to make these things violations, much like we did before. I think it was in connection with the, it might have been in the business license issue, where we were talking about things that would be fines only, and not misdemeanors or not criminal infractions. And so, but at the same time, still preserving some due process rights on the part of someone who would receive a citation or notice of violation, so that they still had an avenue to be able to contest the basis upon which they received the ticket, so to speak. So trying to balance those interests the city's interest in being able to keep the rights of way open, but balance that with a resident or a visitor right of saying, wait a minute, I shouldn't have gotten this violation because there's some valid reason for, why they didn't know they shouldn't have parked there or that sort of thing. And so this draft that you have in front of you tries to do that with notices. You do give up, when you give up the potential for a criminal violation, you give up some leverage in that you don't have a potential jail enforceable, criminal enforceable penalty over someone. And so that's part of the trade-off here. But at the same time, your staff has recommended that you make that trade-off as a means of trying to get I don't know if softer approach, I'm not sure how staff would characterize it, but as a means of getting compliance without using too heavy a hammer, I think might be a way of looking at it, so that you can try to get folks to do the right thing, but using a civil penalty as opposed to some sort of criminal type penalty as a means of doing this. So you do give up some leverage when you remove that from the toolbox, but that's the recommendation that's coming to you from your staff. So that's what's involved here. Okay. Did I cover that well enough, Nathan?
You did. I think you did identify the change, but I also would like to add the goal here with staff is to make it more efficient. What we talked about at the staff level was there is a cost to going through the criminal violation process that's currently on the books with our city codes. And there's a cost for the time for the police department to defend themselves in court. There's a time for the court system, and there's a paperwork trail that needs to go through there. There's also the penalty, the financial penalty that's currently in the city code is relatively minor. And that cost may not be enough to deter folks from following these rules. And so with the help of White Peterson, as well as input from the police department, we've identified that it's much more efficient to create a policy that allows a violation as a fine that keeps it out of the court system and allows an appeal process to be conducted within the city staff, but also increases the fine so that it deters folks from creating these violations as far as parking or putting snow in there. And Justin, it might be helpful if you could kind of add a little bit of how this impacts your work that you do and how this is probably beneficial to the effort that you have to do to enforce these rules.
Absolutely, Nathan. Thanks for the opportunity. Mayor, Council, as we've discussed many times in the past with previous council members and during my tenure here, one of the things that we've been trying to do is decriminalize many of the violations or codes within our city code. We talked about that with the mask mandates. We did the same thing in particular with the mask mandates and making them a fine rather than a criminal violation. It is much more effective and cost effective as far as the timeframes go that Nathan just talked about, keeping it out of the court system, because then you have the court systems that are being bogged down for these types of fines. Many of our city code violations are misdemeanors in actuality, and so they go through the criminal courts and there's an appeal process and court hearings and things of that nature. But if we can make these, as we've recommended with other ordinances in the past, as we come across them, we're trying to standardize. If we can make these a fine assessment only and no, there's not the criminal penalty that's in there, it becomes much more efficient for us to be able to issue those citations. There's not the criminal burden of proof that's involved with this. We want to have a standardized, regulated appeals process so that there is the accountability of due process for the person, so that if there will be a process that's laid out, we have several options that will be available at a later point that would run through the city, basically almost like a hearing, so to speak, but it's not a criminal hearing. As Bill pointed out, you do lose the enforcement action of turning it into a criminal violation down the court, but there's always the option of referring it over to debt collectors, as many cities do. The city of Boise does this. They have a very extensive parking regulation that White Peterson and Bill Punkeney had referred to during this process and to look at. So really what with this particular recommendation that's coming from us at this point in time and asking if we're going in the right direction, we've looked at the locations and the timeframes of when these regulations go into place, keeping it in the central business district, keeping the timeframes the same. But it's really this formalized process of how we can issue these citations. For example, one of the problems that we have with that we've had previously, considering it was a criminal incident for depositing snow in the right of way, we had to find the actual person that deposited the snow in the right of way, meaning we had to find the plow operator that may be hired by another company and he's just a normal worker that's out there doing what it is that he's told. But according to criminal complaint, he would be the one that would be held responsible and have to go through the criminal courts, rather than going to the owner of the plow company or the owner of the residence. What this will allow us to do is to try to identify the person that's responsible, but if necessary, the citations can roll back to the person that owns the residence, as well as the person that is operating the plow or that owns the plow company. The burden of proof is less in this particular incident rather than trying to find the particular person. That was a problem that we had, because when we'd have someone depositing snow in the right of way, we would literally have to find that person and catch them in the act, or have some sort of camera footage, or be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they're the person that deposited that snow. This alleviates that issue and keeps it out of the criminal courts. And so that's really why, from a police standpoint, from a law enforcement standpoint, that I'm in favor of it, because it provides another tool in our toolbox and an opportunity to address a problem that until now has been very difficult to address. And the frustrations are mounted within the city, within the Public Works Department, of course. Those folks that are out there at 4 a.m. trying to clear the streets, and they can't do so because something's there. And unfortunately, many times the police department has to say, I can't do anything with this at the moment. I'm sorry. So we're really trying to work together collaboratively to make this easier and more efficient on all folks involved within the city. Make sense?
Perfect sense.
Yeah. So I think we're all shaking our heads. I think where we're at after hearing the information thus far, Nathan and Justin, is that you're on the right track, and done some great coordination with city attorney, people that know about these kinds of things and have customized it for our city. So I believe we would like you to bring this back to us in a formalized manner at a future meeting.
I just had a question regarding vehicles parked in the right of way. If there's someone parked there, are you gonna tow them or ticket them, or what's the?
I'll answer that one. So what we've been doing is we've just been issuing citations. We have not towed. Simply, one of the reasons that we have not towed is that there are no towing companies in town that will do the non-consent tows now. Of the ones even in Cascade, they will not do that. They have enough business as it is, so to speak. But what we've been doing is simply issuing the citation. We've worked with Chris Malvich and his crew on the streets, and what they do is they go around the vehicle at that point in time. So we will issue the violation, not the citation, not an infraction. We'll issue the violation. Then they'll be responsible for that. The Public Works has gone around that and then come back at a later time. But one of the things that was a big issue with this was the deposit of snow in the right of way. And later on in the season, when we're in February and there's no place to put that snow. So what we're trying to do is cut this off on the front side. And when people start depositing in snow, address it very early before 8 feet of snow gets piled up in the right of way. But we haven't been towing. We didn't tow at all last year.
Sure. I guess, follow up to that would be, with what frequency are we running into vehicles parked, whether it's downtown or any of, anywhere that
Every night.
in like downtown area?
Downtown, on the streets, residential, at the VRBOs, the Airbnbs, the Vicases, whatever it is, every night. Some nights more than others, depending upon the amount of snow that comes in, that it becomes an issue. But every night, officers respond to, it's been as many as 30, 40 cars in an evening to as few as 3 or 4.
Gotcha. So I guess this kind of goes back to the question I think I asked last time we talked about this, is why would we consider alternate side street parking for snow removal? Clearly there's people still have the need to park somewhere.
Yes, sir.
And so I guess, in my opinion, this isn't necessarily solving the problem. It's maybe bringing in some more money into the bank for us, writing tickets.
No, Colby, I absolutely understand what you're talking about. As far as implementing that on the other side, that would be a question for Nathan, but I can say from an enforcement standpoint, we can create all the rules, we can create all the regulations, we can post all the signs, and yet we still face the same problem. It's the same instances we have with speeding within town. And as I'm sure each one of you know, council members, I'm sure you hear about speeding complaints all day, every day. I get those all day, every day, and we have gone to extensive lengths of posting signs, electronic speed signs, enforcement, and yet that's still the #1 complaint in the city. And I would anticipate that as long as we're in a snow community, we're still going to have numbers of persons during those points in times that just simply are not aware or simply just have to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I can add to your question about the idea of side street plowing. As you're probably aware, if you've observed the snow plowing operations, we are a extremely thin department. We do not have multiple shifts. We barely have enough snowplow operators, and currently we're 20% short on snowplow operators going into the year because of resignations and lack of being able to recruit folks. We can barely get the job done with the staff and the equipment that we have. The idea of doing side street, one side of the street and then the other would not happen. We would have our crews running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they'd all be burnt out within 7 days. So I don't see that as being even a practical option. Even if we tried to implement it, certain streets in town would just never get plowed because we could only get a quarter of the town done in that manner. Part of the problem here, and I've lived in multiple snow communities throughout my career, the current fine is $25. That is not a serious fine in the sense of that's going to deter someone who may be spending hundreds and thousands of dollars to come to town. And due to the fact that they're not organized and haven't figured out where they're planning to store their large vehicle with their large trailer, ends up becoming an issue that could completely block a street where we can't even get the snowplow down it. I believe the history of the way we've implemented this, and Justin can speak to that. We try to do the best we can. We try not to implement these fines. The officers go into some of the restaurants and bars at night, reminding people that they need to, get their cars off the street before we start issuing these citations. But that we're at a point now where this needs to be something that is commonplace within our community, that people know if you violate this policy, it's going to hit you financially. And that's one of the questions we do have for the council tonight, is what do they think is an appropriate amount for this fine to be? So I guess to summarize, the alternate side street plowing, I don't see being practical for us to implement. And I also feel like at this point, most of the visiting public And the businesses that support them are not taking this serious enough, and that they are making their customers aware. If you park on the street in front of your vacation rental or your second home, it will be expensive.
So is there anywhere downtown for someone to park overnight? Say they
There is.
had too many drinks and they don't want to drive home because Justin's gonna get more money out of them.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And currently we have the Mill Street parking lot as that location. And that's the only location in town.
Got it. And then to the alternating sides, I guess I'm not quite understanding, you know, how that, you know, would increase the workload if you're essentially just plowing to one side of the street.
So there's simply not enough room to allow that to happen. If we plowed just one side of the street and left the other side unplowed with vehicles in there, emergency services wouldn't be able to come to your house if they needed to. There wouldn't be enough space. All of our roads would be neck down to 1-lane roads, because that whole second lane would be completely full of snow. And then the next day you'd have to go back and plow that side of the street. And if it continues to snow for each day, you know, we have lots of storms where we're plowing, you know, continually. You would never be able to keep up with it.
So how do other communities deal with that? It seems like it happens in other communities, and that.
Colby, I think one of the issues that we face is just basically the environmental design of this city, and the streets are not designed. Yeah, as you well know, you go down any of the streets during the winter, any of the residential streets, and they are just simply not wide enough. They're barely wide enough once we get the berms built up on the sides for 2 vehicles to go. And so I would have to agree with Nathan on that. I don't know how it would work, but just from a response to of emergency vehicles, as he stated, going down. If it's a 1-lane road, basically, I'm not sure how we would do that. But from the other standpoint of the parking downtown and things, we've had discussions about that where we need to supply that. And as per your remark of making more money, we don't get any money off of those DUIs. That's a misdemeanor offense. And so we make no money off of that. We're not looking for money. Even in issuing the citations and the fines, we're not looking at trying to make money for the city. That's not our prerogative. That's not what it is that we do. We're looking to change behaviors. And that's what the fine amount needs to be, is enough to change the behavior, but not be punitive in nature. And so the fact of the matter is that we would look to council to see what it is that they believe would be appropriate in a situation such as this.
Sure, I think so. The two different things happening here, I guess, with like the downtown parking, you know, deterring business from downtown businesses. You know, if the word's out, well, don't even try to park anywhere down here past 11 o'clock, or you're going to get a ticket, blah, blah, blah. So
it's past 3 a.m. And one of the things that I meant to say a minute ago, and I apologize for interrupting, but I think this is an important point, is that Aaron has already created a mass media campaign for this to put forward, to try to educate, as we've done previously in the past, to try to work with the vacation rentals in town, to double down on our efforts on that, to make sure that this information is provided. This is not something that we're looking to go out and be the bad guy or be the
sure.
big.
I understand, so I'll interrupt you too.
Sure, go ahead.
So back to the alternating street parking, or you get 2 birds stoned at once. You're going to slow everyone down. You're going to solve your speeding problem if the road's narrower. And I understand the staffing situation, the time. I understand all of the things that are going into it, but I know that it is something that happens in other snow communities that get even more snow than we do. And it works, and they're even narrower streets than what we have here. Just just thinking about, how do we accommodate, because there are people, whether it's their lack of planning or whatever it may be, there's, making it harder on people, especially who are visiting here, to park their vehicle wherever, they may have had it planned out at their Airbnb that there was trailer parking, but the property manager didn't plow out that trailer parking zone this week or whatever. I think there's lots of extenuating circumstances, and that's how, I know that it's not a simple solution, and overall, I think we're on the right track with this stuff, but my big concern is that, kind of that deterrent, or the kind of the unwelcome vibe from people, or, people might get with, feeling like it's overly restrictive. And I know that you do a great job with enforcement, Chief. Like, you've done a wonderful job across the board with enforcing so many different things in a really great way. You're really good at not being heavy-handed on stuff. So
Thank you.
I have no doubt that you'd be able to pull that off. But I guess it's just that consideration of is there another option to consider besides just ticketing?
Yes, sir.
And finally, that was just a little lighthearted prod on the DUI thing.
I know, I had to give it back.
That's all I have to ramble about tonight, I suppose.
Well, I wanted to add too, so just to be clear, we're talking about Central Business District as it relates to the 3 a.m. cars need to be out so we can plow the downtown and get the town ready for the morning. So we understand that. And then I just wasn't entirely clear, maybe I didn't read it clearly enough, is we're also talking about as it relates to any parking on city streets overnight as it relates. So I would say, Spring Mountain Ranch, and having been on the board there since, you said, Justin, you said speeding tickets are one of the biggest things we hear. Well, having been on that board for 15 years, I would say one of the biggest things that we hear as a concern of that neighborhood, which is, I believe, the largest HOA in town, is the concern of people come into vacation properties, vacation rentals, and they'll park a snowmobile trailer there, which then that causes an issue for the plows, causes an issue for the neighbors. It causes an issue for people that may be in a situation where they need an ambulance to get to their home, or they need to get out. And so those roads, for instance, Fireweed being a prime example, gets very narrow in the winter.
Yes.
And so the biggest concern as a board member there that we hear is the concern about safety and access to people's properties, particularly due to people coming in and parking large trailers on the road. So I'm absolutely in support of what you're trying to do and trying to accomplish here, because I think it's something that we hear from people in the community on a fairly regular basis and it's a health and safety concern. So I really appreciate what you're doing here. And I think our community does, or would, when they understand it. So that's why I just want to be real clear so anybody listening can hear the importance of this.
Thank you, Mike.
I like Kobe's idea too. I know we're all just trying to find the best solution, and we like the direction you're going and the proposal. Because I look and I think it's interesting because we're much higher. We don't have short-term rentals in the Woodlands, so we don't get near the issue. What I'm getting to is there some way? Of course, I'm not trying to say we should not allow short-term rentals. That's another topic. But, the problem exists around a lot of those kinds of things. But I find that's an interesting juxtaposition for how much of a problem it is in Spring Mountain Ranch, and I can see why. And then the fact that the houses and design of the Woodlands and the CCRs are that everybody parks their own vehicle on their own site all the time, and it's not an issue because
throughout the city,
yeah,
what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it varies. Of course, that's
Yeah.
what we're saying, yeah.
in the wintertime.
Yeah, anyhow, I rambled a bit on that, but I'm in total support of the direction you're going. And you were asked, what's a fine? I think going, to me, we are still a welcoming community, and that first number to hit my mind, if it doubled and went to $50, I know that burns my pocket a little bit to get $50. I think, between 50 to 100. 100 is a lot of money for somebody who, it's a lot of money for a lot of people living here for whatever reason led to, then they've been gone for 2 weeks, they come home, their driveway isn't plowed, they park on the street and you have $100 fine. And you're a senior. So, anyhow, I'm just gonna throw out the number $50. I don't know, Justin, Chief Williams, and,
I'm still Justin. I'll always be Justin.
yeah, well, I kind of Nathan and said Justin, but.
I've been called a lot worse.
Yeah. Anyhow, I'm, if you're asking, I think it's interesting to put out what that number might be.
One of the things that we might be, that I've kicked around, and I don't know the legalities of this, and so maybe we'll be able to come back later, is that when we're talking about these obstructions in the right of way, and when we know that they're associated with a particular residence, rather than, and I'm not sure about the legal on this, so we'll consult. I don't want to go too deep into the woods with this, but perhaps maybe if we could find a way to make the homeowner responsible for the vehicles. So if you have the vacationers that are out, the homeowner has leased it out. They have trailers parked out front that the homeowner ends up being responsible for those vehicles that are parked. I don't know if we could do that. This is a fine. This is not a criminal matter. It would be something for discussion, but that's what we're looking at doing with snow in the right of way. I don't know if we would be able to do that with vehicles in the right of way. I'm just not certain yet, but it's something that I'll look into. Because Colby, I think that might be something along the lines of addressing what it is and holding our locals more responsible for the enforcement and managing their vacation rental if that's something that's going on. Just a thought.
Well, you're looking at two things. We're talking about this. We're talking about snow removal on one hand, and then we're also separately talking about vehicles in the right of way.
Exactly.
So if we keep those two separate, and as we're talking about fines, we need to keep those two separate, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not proposing the same thing.
Nathan?
Well, we don't
Sure will.
have to. I think what we've tried to do is create the policy so that it's simple and that the process in which a violator, the process that they go through would be very similar and simple, and it keeps them out of the courts. The discussion about the fine is completely within the council's discretion. As we were talking about this before, that for many people, not all people, when they are coming to a community and they are experiencing something, they're spending a tremendous amount of money to come here. And for them to, pay $50 to park in front of their street might be perfectly acceptable. For them to receive a much higher fine might actually matter to them. And what's most important is the educational process that the community goes through, in the sense of, if you receive a stiff fine for parking in the right of way, you're not going to rate the vacation rental that you're at, or you're not going to respond well to that experience. And that will force these individuals to educate their customers and say, part of the pamphlet that you get when you walk into the hotel or the vacation rental or wherever it's at is, be aware, do not do this. I've traveled around to many different places, and that's exactly what they tell you. Do not park on the street, you will get towed, and that's $250. Or do not park on the street, you will get a fine. So that's, part of this is really embracing this as a community to say, if we don't do this, we're going to continue to have these problems with snow in the right of way and with parking in the right of way. And if we continue to do this, if we continue to operate the way we are, we're going to continue to have problems where more and more large vehicles come in here and block the right of way, and then we get calls about why their street's not plowed correctly, or that it's down to one lane, and all these different things that we're dealing with. And what I'm seeing as a director managing this public works process is that the cost and the effort involved to plow snow in the city is growing exponentially, but our staff and our equipment are not. And so it could become, the cost is just growing with more sidewalks, with more driveways, with more landscaping. All of the things that are happening are making this problem much more difficult. If we don't get ahead of it, we're playing catch up. And I think we put a lot of good effort into this. We're now looking for a way that we can establish a proper a fee or a fine. And I think that's the next discussion.
Council,
Well,
just if I may, real quick, just to kind of summarize and make 2 quick points to try to kind of move this along a little bit. My recommendation would be that they would be separated, that snow storage be one, depositing of snow in the right of way, and that parking be another, that those fines be separate, be treated differently. One is obviously more of a long term than a short term. So that would be my recommendation on that. And another thing that I just got in the ear from the people that always help me behind the scenes that are watching and reminding me of things, this also, with marketing correctly, would encourage the use of the public transport and the extra buses that we have in town now. And if we can partner and work that and work hand in hand and advertise those both at the same time, maybe it would further our goals as a community to enhance the use of the public transportation as well. But my recommendation to council would be allow us to go back, see what other cities charge for fines, to see what it is that they do, see what Boise charges for this, because this recommendation, part of this template had come from them, to contact other snow communities and see how much they charge and what their regulations and their fees and fines and amounts are, and to give council a better idea of something instead of recreating the wheel and taking that burden upon ourselves, looking to see what others have done, and then let you gauge that and then come up with something that you believe would be a fair amount.
Yeah, and Mayor and members of the council and Justin and Nathan, also keep in mind that in these other communities where part of the remedy is a non-consent tow, keep in mind what that penalty is to that vehicle owner and what that cost would be, and keep that in mind. It's certainly is way more than $50. And so have that in mind too, so that there's that. The other thing you might look into is whether or not the size or type of the vehicle, whether there might be a different fine based upon what it is. In other words, if it's a really big trailer, maybe it's a bigger fine than if it's, Volkswagen Bug. You see what I mean? If it's a smaller car versus a large pickup. I mean, is the fine the equivalent of filling your large 1-ton diesel pickup? Or is it, what's it the equivalent of? And keep that in mind in terms of, is it really a deterrent amount? How does that kind of fit the punishment, fit the crime, so to speak, in this scenario?
Non-consent tows in Valley County, the last time that we towed, were running about $295. So that would be the amount that the person would have to pay if their vehicle was towed. Another issue that you have is in the towing aspect, it would be significantly greater if they have to tow a vehicle and a trailer, if anyone would be willing to do that. And so far, we found no one that would be willing to do that. So that's the reason why we typically expedite things. It's far more economical to issue the fine and move on.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said, Chief Williams, about the idea of looking around at what some other cities do. And I agree that $50 really isn't much of a deterrent for many people. So I'll see where the decimal ends up on that $50.
We'll bring it back to you. That way that you have something to chew on.
So can I ask just one more to just keep beating this dead horse for you guys? Are there any neighborhoods in particular, like Spring Mountain, with a high number of vacation rentals, or anywhere that alternate side parking would be considered like maybe we could run a trial on that to see how that goes?
Nathan, that's a question for you.
Oh, yeah, sure. None that I can think of at this time. I mean, I would welcome a sit down with you to talk with our street superintendent and fully understand how you could actually implement that with the operations that we have now. I can see that happening in certain downtown urban areas where you have, on-street parking spaces on both sides, limited access points, and it could be that certain sides of, commercial districts would have that type of operation. But, um, Mike mentions fireweed. Fireweed's a much larger right-of-way than many of our right-of-ways in the older sections of McCall. We have much narrower conditions than Spring Mountain Ranch. And so the conditions that are happening in Spring Mountain Ranch are common throughout the community, and particularly some of our older sections where the right-of-ways are much smaller and we don't have as much room to store snow, it gets even worse. And I did believe I provided a map in our May work session that showed the areas where we're having these problems, and it's throughout the community. So it's not just one place or the other. That being said, I will go back and study this issue of alternate street parking and try to understand how and why it may be working in some communities. And if you know those communities, if you wouldn't mind emailing me those, that'll help expedite my research.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just, I agree with everyone else on the fines and where we're going with this stuff, but, I feel like if we don't try to follow up with maybe a solution to the problem, because people are going to take the hit on the fine, or they're not going to know, or whatever, we're still going to have cars parked in the right of way. Maybe it will improve with the right number on the fine and the right amount of education, et cetera. But, I think that it would be prudent to look at kind of solutions to that problem too, and maybe, to accommodate, vehicles, even though like I wish everyone could come up here and we had a great bus system and no one had to drive anywhere, but that's not the reality, so how do we kind of, if there's something that's achievable, at the city level to help kind of accommodate a problem that is continuing to occur, what are some other solutions that maybe we can do in the interim as we continue to grow?
Well, the other item too that, and I certainly think, and I think other people appreciate as well, for those that are paying attention, or watching the meeting or reading the paper after the meeting, that is that, when we look at how, and I obviously don't know all the intricacies of the snow removal within the city, and it's a good suggestion, Nathan, to get that understanding. And it is always good for us as council members to kind of have the conversations with department heads and people within the departments to understand what exactly they're doing and what their concerns are. But we have more construction and more building going on even just this year. And you take, for instance, a neighborhood like, let's just take an example of, say, Lick Creek Meadows, which has been had quite a few new homes built. And so when you're plowing in there, my question is once there is a home on every single lot, I'm completely baffled as to where the snow is going to go. Because right now the snow goes
that's
on
exactly why
lots.
we're bringing this to your attention. Yeah.
So I think what you're doing is really important and really valuable, because it seems very difficult to understand where the snow is going to go in a lot of neighborhoods once every single lot has a home on it. So I think you're thinking ahead and looking at this is really important and really appreciated.
Not going to wait climate change to alleviate the problems. Let's know.
All right, well, with the permission of everyone on the council, I think I'll summarize where we're at. And first of all, I wanted to thank Nathan, Justin, and Bill and Annette for helping us get this far. It's a really good starting point. Step two, the second time we've touched this topic, we've made a lot of progress and been real sensitive to our needs. And then second thing I wanted to say is I really appreciate everyone from council weighing in and providing honest feedback and their experiences. So our recommended action was to provide direction to you, and I think we've done a good job tonight on that. Hopefully you've captured that. And we look forward to seeing some creative solutions with some of the things that we're still still interested in tweaking. And I do think you'll be able to help us better with the pricing structure. And we agree with you that come up with fines that are appropriate for each of the two scenarios.
Will do.
Thank you both. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. Good work on that, everyone, on the work session. We're going to move into the business agenda. We have several small items, small in terms of the time that we estimated to work through these. The first item is Agenda Bill 21-279. And that's a request to approve a submittal of a children's pedestrian safety grant application. And the specific location is East Steinhardt Lane, the pathway that exists there. Delta, thanks for helping us on this tonight.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Delta James, Economic Development Planner. And yes, this agenda bill is requesting approval to submit a grant application to the Children Pedestrian Safety Grant Program, which is administered through the local Highway Technical Assistance Council. Funding for this grant program is provided by state funding. This year it was allocated in 2021 use of surplus dollars at the state level to fund this program, which targets the maintenance and improvements of pathway systems for bikes and pedestrians, particularly those that are utilized by children. The project that receives funding must be basically shovel ready, ready to go and planned. The maximum grant amount is $250,000 and does not require a local match, although projects that have local match score gain more points in the scoring system for the grant competitiveness. The city currently has plans to reconstruct East Steinhardt Lane from the State Highway or 3rd Street intersection east to Sampson Trail. And it will that project will include some improvements to the pathway that exists there adjacent or alongside East Steinhardt Lane and provides access to the middle and elementary schools up to the east. So it's a good project to seek some support for. And if we are awarded, we will be able to do some improvements and some maintenance to that pathway, which would include providing a little bit more better separation of the pathway from the roadway at certain sections, particularly at the westerly part of the project. And then also the construction of an ADA ramp to access the pathway near where Commerce Street meets East Steinhardt Lane there.
Great. And Delta and Nathan, just a real quick question. So the timing of the actual roadway, maybe Nathan, you can comment on that. Does that fit in with our goals here? If we submit this grant, is to have it completed in 2022 by December. Does that fit with our goals for the road?
It does, Mayor Giles. The Steinhardt Lane project is quite complicated. And we've commenced the design. We're through the preliminary design process and we're moving towards final design. We've got a tremendous partner in ITD helping us with the intersection. So we have meetings next week to understand that. We're looking at options to possibly break the project into 2 phases that might minimize impacts on the traffic conflicts and all of that. So we're trying to figure out this. We've got a great opportunity here. It's a big project. It's very expensive. Looking at this grant funding will help us pay for some of the pathway funding. So yeah, that's our intention. We wouldn't be here if we didn't think we could do it. But ultimately, you'll make that decision when you award the bids later this spring.
Thank you for explaining all that, both of you. And then one last real quick question. Cost impact says up to 250,000. So if we did a one-to-one match and we needed to spend $1 million to do it correctly, that's why that number's in there. That's the maximum amount.
That, Mayor Giles and Council, that number is the maximum grant award amount. We do not are not required to provide a match to the grant request. So the grant will request all of the funds necessary to do the improvements to the East Steinhardt Lane pathway itself. We will leverage that by demonstrating our investment into the improvements of the roadway as well in 2022. And then, of course, we'll mention the larger project with the ITD partnership for the intersection improvements as well.
Thank you for explaining that. General questions, how's everyone feeling about this opportunity?
Nice work finding this one and looking at it. And I just want to extend the compliment and the thanks for what a great job both of you guys can do for the city. Is pretty incredible. So nice work, Delta. Let's get this one.
Fingers crossed, I'll do my best, and thank you very much, council member.
Council, we feeling good enough to, we'll move ahead with a motion to?
Yes. Yep.
Great. I'll look for a motion in a second, please.
I move we approve the submittal of a children pedestrian safety grant application for improvement to the East Steinhardt Lane pathway and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Thank you, Colby and Mike. Motion has been made and seconded to approve submittal of a children pedestrian safety grant application for improvement to the East Steinhardt Lane pathway and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries. Nathan and Delta, good job on that. We're looking forward to it. I bet you we'll compete pretty well based on what you've told us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Our next item is Agenda Bill 21-276, a request to submit Tree City application for recertification. Thank you, Kurt.
Good evening, Mayor Giles, members of the council. Kurt Wolf, Parks and Recreation Director. Again, it's been another year, but it's time to apply or reapply for recertification for Tree City USA. The City of McCall has been at Tree City USA for over 20 years now. I think we're over 15 years with a growth award. Happy to answer any questions. I know most of you have seen this in the past. This year, as it relates to the growth award, those are given out to cities that have invested in their community, especially as it relates to trees through various projects. It's kind of a point system. And this year we've, between the work the Parks Department's done, the Tree Committee, and Public Works has done with some of our capital projects, we were able to pick from a number of different projects and activities to earn enough points to apply again. So again, happy to answer any questions and request we approve, authorize the mayor to sign the application for recertification.
So we had a great briefing by the chairman of the Tree Advisory Committee, and that set the stage pretty well for tonight's request. And thanks, Kurt. Please extend our appreciation to everyone on that tree committee. It's pretty impressive what we've accomplished over the many years. Any questions for Kurt before I ask for a motion?
Kurt, do we in any way acknowledge that McCall is a Tree City USA? Is there some kind of way to, are we promoting that enough so people understand that is something that's really significant to us? And when you, anywhere you look in this town, when you stand about any neighborhood, you look around and you think you're in a forest, anywhere you go in town. And that is really where we want somebody to see and think in 20 years also.
I couldn't agree more. While we do have the signs as you come into town, and I'll stress the value in both our staff and Aaron Greaves in their effort to promote via the website and social media, especially as these things come about or when we receive that status. And then obviously annually with our Arbor Day events, we really highlight that. That's usually when that certification is presented to us, as well as the Growth Award in a form of a PR event.
Great. I'll keep my eyes, but it's probably out there more than I'm seeing it, but that's a really proud designation. Thank you for pursuing it.
All right, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the McCall application for Tree City USA.
I move,
Good.
I move we approve the City of McCall application for Tree City USA and a growth award and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Yeah. Good job, guys. Tracking all this. This is good.
Yeah.
All right. A motion's been made and seconded to approve the City of McCall application for Tree City USA and Growth Award and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. So, Mike made the motion, Lyle seconded. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezek,
Yes?
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you, council. Thanks a lot, Kurt.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Okay, our next item in the business agenda is professional services agreement with Toothman Norton Engineers. This is the airport improvement project runway and rehabilitation. So
That's me.
that'll be Annette tonight.
That'll be our airport manager.
Interim airport manager.
Thank you, Annette.
Hopefully I read enough about this that I can answer some basic questions. Okay, so the AAC has been working with the airport staff and TO engineers on maintenance projects. And this is one where runway 1634 or 34, I think, is that how you're supposed to say?
16 and 34.
16 and 34, thank you. Needs a lot of work, as you can see in the agenda bill. And so the FAA has agreed to fund this project as part of the east-west taxiway reconstruction. And so everyone's reviewed it. They've put all the plans together, or the conceptual plans together, and FAA said fine. So this is coming before you tonight to officially engage TO to conduct that project and get the bids and everything. So I don't know if you have any questions. The one thing that you might hear about, and maybe Colby can help me with this too, is that the FAA will be requiring us to change the designation of the runway as a result of this due to something with magnetics.
Magnetic declination.
Magnetic declination. So, and I believe it has to do with the GPS approaches and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, there will be a change to the runway number and we'll have to go through a whole process with FAA for new procedures, flight procedures. Is that correct? Operation procedures. And again, we had an AAC meeting today actually and briefly discussed that. So everybody understands that there will be a small change. We'll have to go through a process to implement that. But everyone still agrees that it needs to move forward because we need to repair the runway. So.
Any questions?
Hoping you don't have any questions.
I think we're good with this. It sounds really straightforward and it's a good write-up. I'll look for a motion to approve the professional service agreements with TO.
Move we approve the professional services agreement with TO Engineers for AIP 3-16-023-032-2022 runway 1634 rehabilitation and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Second?
Thank you, Colby. Thank you, Mike. A motion has been made and seconded to approve The motion has been made and seconded for approval of the professional services agreement with TO Engineers for AIP 3-16-0023-032-2022. Runway 16-34. Rehabilitation and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. May I have a roll call vote on that, please?
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for pinch hitting on that one. So we're on to our last item before adjournment, and that's the upcoming meeting schedule discussion.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the document that is in your packet has recently been updated. So your next meeting, December 16th, the work session is tentatively scheduled. We're getting all the documents together now to be about the joint powers agreement proposal from the county to all of the cities to form a regional fiber utility or fiber district. And there was a brief article in today's paper where Commissioner Maupin touched on that concept. So the county attorney has prepared those documents. They're out for review at White Peterson. And if we can get that together, then we will have that work session on the 16th to educate you all on what that concept is and what the vision is and how it would work, and answer questions about joint powers agreements and all of that. And then we can get the direction to move forward with participation or not. Let's see, the other items I believe have been on the list already. And then of course we have the special Friday work session planned to be about short-term rental codes again. And then we are starting into the new year in January. So we're just moving right along. We will have the selection of an auditor for our financial statements as well at the December 16th meeting. So I don't know if you recall, but some time ago you had given me direction to, from time to time, evaluate the big professional services contracts for the city. So we went through a process with selecting the city attorney. We've now done the process for selecting an auditor, and so we'll be bringing that to you at the next meeting.
Looks like we'll be able to start paying bills after December 16th with the resolution to pay bills.
Yes, we'll keep paying the bills while you have basically almost a month break before the next meeting.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's see here. And then we're still planning a retreat for you on the 28th at the end of January. That is that first weekend of Winter Carnival, and now we know for sure Winter Carnival is happening. I think I previously had asked if you guys wanted to consider an alternate date or not, knowing that, and at this time it's still scheduled for that Friday.
Does that work for people?
To keep it as is, and we'll try to be out of here by 3 o'clock or earlier.
Sounds great.
Okay. A reminder, not on here as an official meeting, is that tomorrow night is the tree lighting. People start gathering at 5:30ish. The fire engine will show up with Santa a little bit after that. He'll get in his sleigh. We'll have the kids. We'll have the mayor give his Christmas wish. The Parks and Rec staff put together 200 goodie bags to give out to the kids. Get your picture with Santa, and I think the plan is to officially light the tree at approximately 6 o'clock. So if you're around and want to join us, it'll be really fun. There'll be a band playing, and then again, like Lindsay already mentioned, a lot of the shops are going to stay open till 8 o'clock for Christmas shopping. So should be a good time.
And some of the shops have really gone all out, decorating. They're really looking forward to seeing customers come over. So I think it'll be pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of a nice tradition in a small town.
And then next week, again, not an official meeting, so not on your schedule, but you did get an invitation. We've scheduled the staff appreciation / holiday party Thursday the 9th. We're doing it earlier in the afternoon because we do have a lot of employees that live out of the area and have to commute. And so we decided to move it up a little bit to allow for, we don't want them driving home real late at night. So you're more than welcome to join us out at the golf course parking lot, and I'm crossing my fingers. That is not the day that we get a ton of snow, but it's looking like it might be. So dress accordingly. And Erin's done a great job of putting together a really fun event for everybody. And Banyans will be providing soup, hot chocolate, and hot cider. So it'll be fun. And we'll give out awards to employees for their years of service and that type of thing. So if you can join us for a few minutes. Families welcome, kids welcome. And if there is snow, they can slide down Birch number 3. So that's all I have, unless you all have questions for me. Or I guess I should point out, I am going to be gone again. Starting the week of the 13th and the week of Christmas. My daughter's getting married, and so that's the week of her wedding. It's the week of the 13th, and then we're gonna see family for Christmas and come back. So Bessie Joe will be me, and I'll be reachable if there's an emergency, but I will be celebrating the last child to go off the family payroll, as my husband calls it.
That's good.
Where's the wedding?
The wedding is going to be in Mexico.
Wow.
Which is why we're gone for a week. So.
That'll be nice.
Yeah.
Special.
Okay.
All right. Before we adjourn, give us a 2-minute update. You went to some training yesterday.
Yeah, it was actually excellent. It was way exceeding my expectation. It's by the Idaho Taxpayers Association. And they look a lot about how taxes are used, what's best used. This association has been in existence for 75 years. They try to guide the legislature. That's why it's set at this time. Governor Little spoke at it. And one of the things that was kind of interesting to me was the different ways of collecting taxes from municipal to county to state to federal, and how there are fixed fees traditionally that cities and everybody has to pay for, but you can move the taxing gets moved around a little bit. For example, some states, the state pays for the county level jurisdiction, court cases, attorney generals and that. And then in Idaho, the county pays for it. So therefore, there's the county tax. But there were some interesting things about working with counties and cities to look at how fees are collected and what's the most effective way to pay for things. And then the realization also that Idaho is fairly conservative about taxes, and how that kind of affects schools in particularly. Then the last thing that came to mind is Idaho's rainy day fund is $1 billion. And so when you look and say, well, we turned back 400 million to property owners, it wasn't, and it didn't put us in any kind of precarious position. So, I would recommend, if maybe you wanted to attend that in the past, they had people like nationally prominent on, say, economic forecasting. So if you want to forecast for your city or forecast for individually, the person is really astute. Speaking to us and listening to Jerome Powell at the same time and say, hey, I'm gonna tell you, things are so flexible. This is what you have to do to give you the latest news. Anyhow, to the group was much, even their conservative approach to things made me think, have more confidence in Idaho. Fiscally, perhaps, and then the scary things to me were we don't want federal government funding for schools. That's overstepping our ability to determine our own future. And so they're not saying that was the theme, but it really covers the gamut. So thanks for bringing that. That wasn't a great preview. I will see if they send any of the presentations and which ones are most relevant to us. If I find something out of that, I can shrink down to the relevant time. It was an all-day deal. It was neat.
Thank you for, doing that or attending. And any materials, send it to all of us. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, Julie Thrower will be attending, and I will be attending the Legislative Summit, it's called. And this is a session that AIC puts on. So I'm going to have to leave a little bit early so I can get home to do the Christmas tree lighting. Julie will probably be able to stay till 3 o'clock. And I'll ask her in January to give her impressions of what she learned from the session. And I will do the same.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for coming well prepared tonight and staying on track and engaging. And I thought, from my perspective, very good meeting. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Screen, thanks for your help tonight.